What's good, y'all? It's that time of the year, and we've got bills to pay. So if you enjoy listening to the show, hit the links in the description to support by donating, joining our Patreon, or buying some new merch. If about 10% of you listening right now donate $10 to support the show, we'd have enough to cover an entire year's worth of cost of production. Over the years, I've been very intentional about turning down ads for things that didn't align with our values, so you don't have to listen to us talk about gambling or boner pills or any of that other crap. But that's only possible through the support of you, our listeners. So we've created some new ways for you to support, and again, if you enjoy listening to the show, hit the links in the description to support by donating, joining our Patreon, or buying some of our new merch. And of course, don't forget to tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a compliment will take you, and we all know how good it feels to be on the receiving end of some appreciation. Now let's get into today's show. Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Podcast. What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Formula One Podcast, your new favorite Formula One podcast, your favorite Formula One podcaster's favorite Formula One podcast. We got an awesome show for you today. We're actually going to run through a handful of topics that include, obviously, Max's big penalty. The falling out of Max and the FIA continues, let's say. Lance Stroll and Adrian Newey are beefing, apparently, over at Aston Martin. Lance Stroll, man, he's struggling. He's struggling to get out of Q1. We're going to talk about that. We're going to maybe talk about MBS confronting Max after the race. What else we got? Oh, we got the Williams team playing like a team, like nobody else on the grid this race. But before we get into that, I'm going to throw a question to you guys. Who will be the person that pushes Max Verstappen out of Formula One? But don't answer yet. We'll get into that later in the episode. How you guys doing tonight?
I'm intrigued by new formats. That's how you always get me coming back for more. And the only thing I enjoy more than new formats is the rabbit holes that only the three of us are able to get into. So this sounds like the perfect storm of episodes that I will brag to my coworkers about. Todzi, how about you?
Let's see where we go. I'm ready to roll.
Right. I think we're going to need we need like some help from the audience, like to just make sure we check off those boxes, because otherwise, we'll just go down one rabbit hole for an hour and not talk about any of those things. So we'll have to figure out how to make sure we hit them all.
My whole thing is this. If it's just one rabbit hole, I feel like there should be a bigger animal, because rabbits aren't that big. Like, is it an elephant hole, a gorilla hole, a rhinoceros hole? Like, what's the biggest subterranean animal? Like
honey badger.
Honey badger. Well, listen.
Oh, wow.
And listeners, if you had under 2.5 minutes for the forced Danny Ricciardo mention,
I'm not going to let him go.
Look at him. He's rolling up his sleeves like he did something. All right, Nick, take this before we go down another elephant hole.
That was amazing. Yeah, so I lost a lot of money on that under 2.5 seconds before the honey badger, but yeah.
What was faster, Ferrari's pit stop or Todd's mention of Daniel Ricciardo unsolicited?
There you go. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about Ferrari's pit stop real quick to start. Ferrari had a 2-second pit stop. We don't normally talk about these things on the show, but we assume that if you're watching Formula One, you probably are in the Formula One app or looking at F1.com. Fastest pit stop, Ferrari, 2 seconds. Driver of the day, Max Verstappen, and fastest lap was Lando Norris. So 2 seconds is insane. Like, I remember, was it last season or the season before when Red Bull hit a 2-second flat and then they hit like a 199 or a 189 or something? Like, we don't see that speed in the pits, let alone from Ferrari.
They must have done something wrong. Like, maybe, like, I refuse to believe that they were that competent for even that short of time. But I long for the days of the 36-second pit stop. So until somebody breaks the full-on 2-minute barrier, much like Todd broke the 2-minute barrier the other way with the Daniel Ricciardo thing, I'm not interested.
Now, see, that's the interesting thing about it, though, is I want to say the 2-second pit stop for Ferrari was with Lewis, and then they backed it up with Charles with like a 2.1 or something, or a 2.08 or something.
Look, granted, we give Ferrari a lot of heat about like the bad pit strategy and stuff like that, but they've never really been that bad at pit stops. Like, they've been in the between 2 and 3 second range, like on average with everybody else. Granted, they've never been as fast as McLaren or Red Bull. I think didn't McLaren have the fastest pit stop of last season? It was like 1.8, something insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
For me, it felt like Red Bull always had the fastest pit stop. I mean, I compare this to the Dallas Cowboys having like the best offensive line in football. Like that should hold a lot of clout considering how football is played and what are the strengths of a football team is its quarterback and its ability to protect said quarterback. But leave it to Ferrari to take what many people would consider one of the core competencies of a professional Formula One outfit and still end up with ice cream down their face. Because LOL, Scuderia.
Good thing there's no playoffs because the Cowboys / the Scuderia would choke in the playoffs.
Wow, what a Formula One playoffs. Talk about honey badger holes. What would an F1 playoffs look like?
Oh, I got it. So basically, top 4 teams advance, and based on the remaining teams on the grid, you have a draft, and each team gets to pick a supporting team that can help them in any way, shape, or form, whether it be crash the other teams, utilize them for points for the back half of the season. I like this idea. Tom, go some more. I'm going to workshop this for the rest of the game.
It would have to be some sort of spec series, right? Or like spec racing after for the playoff.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the same car. You all get like Miatas, and you have to do 24 hours of Monaco in spec Miatas.
No. You go Tesla, and you go on the 405 LAX during rush hour and just see who can survive and make it an endurance race.
All right, Todd. So what do you think about the Max penalty?
Oh, of course you come to me on this.
Before we go further, let's explain what the Max penalty is because I'm prone to say this.
That's true.
This is someone's possible first episode. So let's just do a little bit of coloring in the lines before we connect the dots, so to speak.
By all means, bro, please fill us in on it.
I genuinely forgot. That's why I was asking you to.
Perfect.
So, at the start of the race, we had a Max on pole with Oscar Pastry in P2. And Max, I think, had an okay start. Oscar had a great start and pulled up basically alongside Max on the entry to turn 1. It actually appeared, and Oscar had the inside of the corner, as they say, meaning that he had the more optimal line or whatever. You always want to be on the inside of the turn. There was a little bit of debate about this. Christian Horner, after the race, came with new pictures and evidence, but I think they were, I don't know, optimal angles to make it look like they were side by side.
Quick honey badger hole. Is there anything scarier to the FIA than the sentence Christian Horner with new pictures? Or nude pictures? Continue.
It could be. Maybe MBS a dick pic. So at the apex of the turn, it appeared in real time and kind of in slow-mo that Oscar had a wheel ahead at the apex, and it looked like Max kind of outbraked himself, so he wasn't going to make the corner anyway. But of course, Max said, Oscar pushed me off. Oscar barely made the corner himself, to be honest. So he did keep, 2 wheels on the track inside the line, so it's not a leaving the track, gaining an advantage type situation. Long story short, they did not give the place back. Or I think there was a crash in turn 4 between Yuki and Ocon?
Yeah.
No, one of the
Gasly.
Gasly.
Yep.
So there was a subsequent safety car. Max did not give the place back, but there was then issued a 5-second penalty, which is abnormal. Usually leaving the track and gaining an advantage is usually a 10-second penalty if you do not give the spot back. But because it was a lap 1, turn 1 incident, they gave him a 5-second penalty. Did I cover all the bases there?
I think so. So basically, they were soft on him, and it was still complaints from. I guess that leads me to another question. Has there ever been a Formula One driver in history ever admit that they were at fault or that they were not the car in front going into a corner?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Actually, that's a really good question. I wonder if there's ever been anybody that kind of copped to it after the fact, like the dust has settled and have been like, oh, maybe I wasn't ahead, or maybe we were wheel to wheel.
Because it just feels like every single thing is always just like, it wasn't me. Like, I did it right. It was always the other guy's fault, which I get as a part of the strategy, but sometimes it feels like we're watching football and not Formula One.
Is this the equivalent of the tush push? Is that what you're telling me?
The tush push. No, this is more of a butt fumble. Shout out Mark Sanchez.
Well, the way Yuki attacked Gasly from behind, I wouldn't call it a fumble, but the butt was definitely involved.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I looked at all the, replays and stuff, and it seemed like Oscar was in the better position and slightly ahead at one point. So I don't know. Like, it just, I get that it's like that corner determines the race winner, especially the way things have been going with the season so far. But it seemed, it made it weird that it wasn't a standard penalty, or it wasn't just to give the place back, or like that's what made it weird. It was like, are they like feeling sorry for Max? Are they, like,
are they helping him dig a bigger hole in the beginning, so then inevitably when he comes back and wins the championship, we can all think about, it wasn't really about the thing, it was all about the journey and the friends we made, or in this case, the enemies.
Yeah,
because the
exactly.
other thought I had was, for all of his posturing, and Max does a great job of it on the radio, I didn't think he was as upset as I thought he would be. It was a great, this guy. And then they just kind of continued driving. Like, he wasn't even that mad. So that's why I think he kind of secretly knows that he did something wrong. And so that's my interpretation of the phenomenon that you described as put through a Verstappen lens.
I think it's like kind of to Nick's point earlier, like every race driver, if you reverse those roles and Oscar was on the outside of that turn and he got pushed off, he would have come across the radio, say, I got pushed off. Yeah. Max would have said, like, I had the corner, whatever. It would have been the other way around. I think the racing drivers at the end of the day know if you have the inside of a corner and the optimal line, like, the other driver's gonna force you off. So you can either like back out of it early or go wheel to wheel, or like crash. They don't want to do that because they'll both lose the points. So the smart thing to do is try your best to get the other guy a penalty, essentially, and then race for second or whatever.
And that's the hidden skill of being a Formula One driver. You almost have to be a politician/lawyer even while you're operating heavy machinery, because you have to be able to quickly point out the shortcomings of others while maintaining your halo, not necessarily in the literal sense, but also the metaphorical sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we saw it last race with Max and Lando, creeping over the line or whatever, right? And like, I'm not trying to pick on Max. It's just that we're going to see him more than anybody else because he's the best driver out there, right? Like all cameras are on him, for any of these moments, even when he's, not necessarily in that battle going through the corner and in second, maybe he's the third car through. We still see a lot of him and hear a lot from him, which kind of leads me into, like another question of like, there's still this whole debate over the cussing on, or whatever. Like, there's just been so many stories about nobody wanting to agree to these terms of no cussing on the radio. And I can't believe we're still seeing conversation about it. It's like these guys are out there risking their lives at 200 some odd miles an hour. If they're not cussing, I would think they need a mental health check. Like,
I was going to say this, similar to your point around, hey, who would be the first driver to admit, hey, it was my fault or I was in the wrong here? Which driver do you think curses the least on the grid?
George Russell.
No.
That's an easy question.
No, I feel like he would say something like fiddlesticks and think like report on himself. And be like, guys, I dropped a hard F back there.
I would say Oscar, but I think this year it might be a little different because, you know, the rookies are probably trying to be professional and
like,
play it safe, maybe.
I feel like rookies shouldn't count, right? Like your clock doesn't start until you drop your first F-bomb. And so in that regard, has Sainz ever cursed? I feel like Sainz hasn't cursed. I'm trying to think.
Oh, yeah. He does.
Oh, yeah, he does.
He has for sure.
Okay. Albon cursed. Albon's gotten really persnickety this year, but we'll save that for the Williams talk later.
Oh, yeah, yes. That's really funny.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the Williams talk, because that was one of my favorite parts of the race, even though normally I hate that shit. It was cool to see them, like, partially because Albon's been so snappy this season on the radio with the team.
He's been really like aggressive, like
What,
calling them dumb almost, like in a passive aggressive way.
oh no,
Yeah.
he's called them out and out stupid. Like he has backtalked his engineer. He's dropped a couple of fiddlesticks, as we call them in this episode. And I don't know what is to blame other than is he feeling slightly insecure about Sainz being his teammate? Because for all intents and purposes, I'm a big Sainz guy. I still think Albon's been the better driver out of the two, and we're nearly a quarter of the way there. Like, what could this be? Is he upset that he didn't get the Yuki role in the second Red Bull? Like, that is something I'm really trying to understand, because my impression of Alex Albon is he might be the most mild-mannered out of anybody on the grid, but this year in particular, he's regressed to the mean in terms of being a douchey, persnickety Formula One driver.
No, I don't know. That doesn't come across to me that way, that like he's being a douchey complainer or whatever on the radio. I feel like he's trying to take more charge of the team. I don't think he's coming across well on the radio or whatever, but he's like almost trying to establish his presence as a number one for Williams, because maybe he is feeling a little insecure with Sainz's teammate. But like you said, he's pretty much wiped the floor with Sainz so far this year.
Yeah, except for this race. So the situation that we're talking about in the race was basically Sainz about 15 to 20 laps before the end of the race. Sainz is ahead of Albon by roughly 2 seconds. But Albon is right about 1.5 to 1 second ahead of
Hajar, was it?
Yeah, Isaac Hajar. So basically, Sainz slowed to keep Alex Albon in DRS a majority of the last 15 races, or 15 laps rather, which allowed them to both score points. Sainz finished 8th, Alex Albon finished 9th, and Isaac finished 10th. But like, I think it was done really well. They did a great job, and it was actually like, excuse me, it was actually like almost
Downright professional.
Yeah, it was almost like, wait, there's like two drivers being cordial on the track. I don't understand. Like, are we watching some other form of racing now?
I was getting a NASCAR flashback specifically around the Talladega Nights of Slingshot Engage with Ricky Bobby and Cal Naughton Jr. I'll let you figure out who's who in that, but I'm pretty sure Ricky Bobby is the smooth operator.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
You're the magic man.
So I don't know if you guys remember this, but Ferrari did that either last year or the year before that.
Yeah.
Where they did the synchronized whatever DRS to keep, because once you get in the DRS train, especially, and it's even worse this year, like you alluded to in the beginning, Nick, like once you're in the dirty air, there doesn't seem to be much, unless there's a large tire offset, there doesn't seem to be much ability to pass on the tracks that we've had so far this year. But
yeah,
it was cool to hear that they had actually talked about it in the pre-race strategy meeting, saying like, oh, we think we're about here with our pace. If we end up in a situation where, one of us has failing tires or whatever, and we're next to each other, let's do this like front to back DRS train thing. And like you said, it worked perfectly.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that until you said it. And that makes it even cooler to me, because it also is a little bit of, let's say like a little bit of a brighter light at the end of the tunnel for Williams. Like, to be able to predict that kind of thing, coming from the last few seasons they've had, that's good on the engineers and on the team. I think like driver wise, it's kind of up in the air, and like both Sainz and Alex Albon are great, but they need the team to be right there with those types of things in order for them to have the confidence to take the team to the next level. And, it is interesting, as I'm going to go back to something you said, Todd, about, or Rohit, about would Alex have preferred to be in the second seat at the Racing Bulls? So outside of like the top 5 teams, what team would you guys want to drive for? Because Williams would be my number one choice outside of the top 5.
Who is Williams in 5th right now?
Maybe,
nope.
Maybe
Haas. I believe Haas is still number 5.
You don't have to go top 5. You can just say, let's just say midfield, whatever you consider midfield.
Like, anybody that isn't McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, or Ferrari, right?
Anybody but them. Yep.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah, I think it would be Williams too, just from the history standpoint alone. Like, they're the most successful, second most successful constructor in Formula One.
Which is why what Rohit said was really interesting to me, because that could be like Alex's attitude, let's say, being a little bit more prickly compared to normal, with the threat of Sainz on the team with him. And I never really thought about the idea of him wanting to be back, or wanting to like maybe get a second chance at proving himself with Red Bull, org. But that absolutely could be why he's a little bit more talkative this year.
And Nick, not to correct you, but I meant like Yuki's seat as in his new seat. Like, out of all the people we've seen in the modern day Netflix era of Red Bull second driver, I feel Albon got the shortest stick.
Yeah,
and
shorter than Liam.
Well, outside of Liam, yes, I agree though.
At this point, Liam might be a Make-A-Wish kid. They're just like, you know what, you got 2 races.
I mean, but yeah, that's a great point. And in my head, that's how I heard you say it. I just was saying Racing Bulls.
No. Now I feel like a jerk, so apologies. I'm not going to get all Alex Albon on you. I'll be the one that is going to yell at myself and like, God, that stupid idiot. But it is one of those things where, for all intents and purposes, we thought Albon was the perfect complement from a psychology perspective to Max, because as fiery as Max was that year, Albon was just kind of had a little bit of science to his game in terms of, I'm just going to put my head down and race. I'm going to get this team points. And the one thing I thought the Drive to Survive series did that really well that year was humanize him, because we didn't really know the backstory about him. We didn't know the fact that I believe his mom was incarcerated for a couple of years, and he was kind of the breadwinner for all of his siblings. And aside from maybe Lewis Hamilton having some sort of weird vendetta against him, because it felt like every time Albon was even within sniffing distance of a podium, Lewis somehow would ruin his race inadvertently. But I think that's how I've always kind of viewed Alex Albon, is, dare I say, he's kind of like Nico Hülkenberg in the fact that I don't know if I'll ever see him get a podium.
I think that's harsh. Harsh to both Albon and Hulk.
Yeah, but I mean, like, here's the thing, and remind me, did Albon get a podium at all with Red Bull?
Oh yeah, he's had a few.
Was it? Okay, then maybe I'm thinking about the fact that Lewis inadvertently caused him.
Lewis definitely. Or I mean, in a couple of cases, I think Albon did it to himself, but it was with Lewis, where they like rubbed tires or whatever. Yeah, like he went off track because of battling with Lewis. Whatever. You're totally on track there. So
Thank you.
Pun intended.
Well done.
Yeah, and Alex had like did he go directly from Red Bull to Toro Rosso, or was it Red Bull to Williams?
I thought he went straight to Williams, because wasn't he George Russell's second driver at one point? Because didn't Williams at one point have Russell and Albon?
Was it?
Yes. So He was Red Bull, then he took a year off and did DTM.
Yeah, that's right.
With Red Bull. And then went to Williams on loan, and now is like out from under the Red Bull umbrella.
And here's the thing. We had, and listeners, you guys can go into our archives, we have been waxing poetic about Alex Albon and that Williams, because he did the impossible, which is he made George Russell look like a secondary driver when we were hearing all about how George Russell was the next big thing and he was going to be a future world champion. But it was Albon that seemingly got more out of that car and performed more Herculean tasks, like the very famous one pit stop, and that pit stop was on the last lap, and he still managed to stay in the points with that car. Like, that might be the single most impressive thing I have seen a non-top 4 driver do in the brief time I've started watching the sport.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the coolest.
Yep.
But is he going to get better now that if they're both being competent? So up until this point, Sainz hasn't really been a factor. But now we have this last race where Sainz beat him / helped him also score points. Do we think it's going to get worse or better for Albano with the testiness, let's say?
Oh, it's definitely going to get worse with the testiness, but I think the car will get more competitive all around, both between both the drivers and with the team. You know, like, I know I'm dumbing it down, but like, those little things make such a huge difference when you have that level of trust in the team, right? Like, and I think that's part of what you see with Albon the first few races is like absolutely no trust, and the attitude seems to be like overriding any possibility of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's
not only that, Nick, like, with greater expectations come a greater pressure. And I think that's the other reason why. For the first time in a long time, Williams is not the also ran. It's not even the punchline. It is arguably the 5th best team on the grid. And we've always talked about the fact that driver pairing would be on the podium in terms of the most complete driver pairings on the grid, with probably being behind maybe the Ferrari and the McLaren boys only, is what I can think of. Like, I think in terms of rather just grid pairings, I think they're a top 3 team. But it is going to be one of those things where I think they know that the writing is on the wall that, hey, you guys are no longer a question of if Williams is going to win the race. It's more like, when is Williams going to get that podium that we kind of expect from them now, given the fact that they have a competent principal, they have a more than competent driving pair, and now it seems like the car is also kind of meeting the standards of every other aspect of that team.
I think it's sooner rather than later we see them. Like, we couldn't look back 2 years, we wouldn't have ever said that Williams would be best of the rest.
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
I think the James Vowles DNA, which it was an amazing hire to bring in James Vowles from Mercedes there. He's completely changed that team in like 3 years.
And nobody talks about it. And we have been on our pedestal championing the likes of Otmar, Fred Vasseur, of sometimes being the non-charismatic pedestrian, but working like team principal. And lo and behold, I think Williams might have gotten the best example of that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think speaking of you know, ghosts in the garage, let's say, I don't know if you guys read all this about Adrian Newey and Lawrence Stroll, but Adrian Newey is essentially that people are saying that he's refusing to work on the 2025 car because there's just no hope for Aston Martin, which is really
anything to say about Lance Stroll.
Well, so there's a lot of purpose in that, right? Like, if you're not familiar with Formula One, you know, like, Todd probably knows more of the actual numbers in this, but like, you get more wind tunnel time the further down the grid you are between seasons, which means Adrian Newey is probably likely hoping that Aston Martin stays near the bottom, because that 2026 car that he's working on, he'll have more wind tunnel time in the off season before the 2026 season begins. But there seems to be like a lot of conflict between him and Lawrence Stroll, because Lawrence Stroll wants to win now, obviously. Also, it came out, I think last week after I don't think we mentioned it, but I think it came out after we recorded, right before the race weekend, that there was like a rumored $300 million deal for Max Verstappen from Aston Martin, which was backed by, I forget what, it's basically Saudi Aramco, right?
Aramco,
like Saudi,
yeah.
So Lawrence Stroll has to get shit together in order to still have that deal on the table, basically, is the way it sounds. So Lawrence Stroll is like, hey, if we're not going to be competitive, I'm going to lose this deal. While Adrian Newey signed, he's being paid 30 something million a year, is basically like, I'm not going to work on this car. I'm going to work on the next car so we can win in the future. Logically in F1, most teams are willing to sacrifice a season in order to be competitive for 4 or 5 seasons down the road. It would be insane if this little beef, and who knows how big this is between them, but it would be absolutely insane if for some reason Lawrence Stroll was like, no, we're going to work on the 2025 car to get into a 5th or a 6th place finish for Aston Martin, when even if they did that, in my opinion, they finished 6th and then they offer Max $300 million and he says yes, they still need a competitive car in 2026. So they still would have been in a better place for 2026, 2027, and 2028, which is the 3 years that Max could run with Aston if he were to sign that deal. They would be better off losing this year.
So tank, trust the process.
Yeah, like it's every sport, right? Like you get the number 1 draft pick, you get more shots at the NBA lottery, like all those things. But it's even bigger in Formula One, in my opinion, because why bother trying to fix a car that you have? I mean, I know it's early in the season, so you still do have a lot of chance to like make changes, but they're way far behind. Like those cars are, as the kids would call them in the sneaker world, bricks.
But not in the Nigel Sylvester sense.
It is.
Yeah.
It is insane to think, like, you kind of just made all the jokes, the memes, or whatever about tank. Like, I equate this to like hockey terms when 2 years ago when Connor Bedard was coming into the league and like tank for Bedard was like a thing, like a legit thing for the Sharks, the Blackhawks, several teams, right? And in terms of like sports franchises and sports like leagues, F1 is always about setting the right expectation, getting that 5-year plan. It's never like a win now, like we're going to sign one player and win now thing. They like almost have to be like, we have to plan ahead. We have to plan, our strategy and our car and everything like 2 years out, right? They're always building for that further down the road thing. It's never a win now thing. So it's so interesting to me that Lawrence Stroll is trying to put pressure on Newey. Again, we don't know how big this beef is or whatever, but like it doesn't make any sense to me from Lawrence Stroll's perspective to like, hey, let's get his eyes on the 2025 car and try to secure a 5th or 6th in the championship when, like, even if they're going to lose that deal, like, they're not going to sign Max Verstappen without a good car. Max isn't going to leave Red Bull to go to arguably the worst car in the grid, even though they're not worst in the standings, because Stroll's having, like, a sneaky good season, which...
But the joke's on you, Todd, because Red Bull has the worst car on the grid. We just know how awesome Max Verstappen is at driving it, that he single-handedly...
Right, but I don't think, like... The Red Bull car's fast, just like kind of more of a theoretical on paper fast. It's very, very hard to drive. Right? If you put Fernando in that car, I think he'd still be... He's not going to be max level quick, but he would be quick, right? Because he's...
No, I'm just yanking a chain.
Yeah.
To your point, though, the only reason I could see them try to save face this year is you want to make that package look sweet, because if there's one thing we also talk about a lot on this podcast, it's not only winning the race but winning the podcast. And it looks far better that, in my mind, if I'm Lawrence Stroll, that I can give you a 5th place team, the best of the rest, as opposed to the worst. But then if you're a true narrative fiend like I am, what better way to have the Max Verstappen reclamation project, because Max could truly take the worst team on the grid and make them first. So either way, it's a win-win if you want to look at it from that perspective.
I mean, that is an interesting idea. One thing I forgot to mention, the other wrinkle in all of this, is that Aston Martin is actually moving engines from They're moving from Ferrari, right? Ferrari supplied engines this year to Honda supplied engines next year.
Mercedes to
Honda, which that probably is like maybe some extra points for appealing to Max, if there is any appeal. But as far as new regulations and changing, new regulations already are difficult for teams to process. That's why it's almost a wild card every time out to see who figured it out behind the scenes. But next year for Aston Martin, going from Mercedes to Honda will be another layer of challenges that are just natural challenges, right? Nothing against either Aston Martin or Honda, but it will be more challenging than, let's say, a team that sticks with the same engine supplier.
Can we rabbit hole on that real quick?
Yes.
Sorry, honey badger hole. Have you guys heard about what's going on with the engine regs for next year?
Are you talking about the V10 conversation?
Well, that's part of it, right? But like, is it? I don't know if it's 26 or 28 now. I'm kind of confusing the two. But the next changes to engine regs, I believe it is 26, and we're not that far away from that. But the goal was to remove the MGU H, and which harvests, for the layman, harvests heat energy and turns that back into electrical energy and charges the batteries, which gives them more electrical energy to deploy for overtaking or staying ahead, whatever.
Shout out to Toyota Priuses.
Yes. I wish that an MGUH. But they wanted to they were scrapping that because it's super complicated and very expensive to build. So they were just going to have the MGU-K, which is like harvesting energy from the clutch and the brakes, whatever. And they were going to do a 50-50 power split. So it was going to be 50% internal combustion power and 50% electrical power. There's been a bunch of simulations of that so far, and Max even commented on this recently, that like on tracks like Monza, where it's a super duper long straight, they were running out of electrical energy before the end of the long straight. So basically they've designed this whole new engine layout thing that may not actually work. And there's a lot of talk, and has been recently, of them completely not scrapping it, but stepping back to being like maybe a 70-30 combustion engine to electrical engine split.
Or, hear me out, they just stick with the 50-50, they drop Monza, they put Laguna Seca back on the schedule for the first time in God knows how long, and I get to see Formula One down the street.
Enough. You're thinking too small. Get rid of Monaco.
I don't think that's ever happening. There's too much tax savings for all of these drivers who, air quotes here for people not watching, live in Monaco.
Another honey badger hole here. You know, one of the only drivers that doesn't live, there's a few, but one of the drivers that doesn't live in Monaco for the tax savings is Pierre Gasly, because he's French and the Monegasque government has a deal with France, and he would have to pay taxes.
A ton, yeah. I saw that too.
That was Kim Illman. Shout out Kim Illman.
Yeah.
Sorry, but like, isn't that insane that they've been hyping up these engine regulations for what, 3-4 years now, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, that actually might not work because we're gonna run out of juice on the straights. Like,
okay, so I think we need to talk about MBS, because
the multi-braking system.
The Max's brake system? No. Yeah. Because I think that most of these things, I think that the idea that the regulation changes were even going to happen, or the V10 conversation, or, I mean, pick your thing, right? I feel like he's on most people's shit list. I hope if we don't record again, y'all know what happened to me.
Speaking of hit lists, we might have made one.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like he's everybody's least favorite person he's like, as one of the notes that I had, he's getting into it with Max on the grid. He's like hovering around after the races. Like, it's kind of like he's trying to be more present, be more engaged with drivers. And really, it seems like he's the one that has caused most of the problems for the FIA and between the FIA and, Formula One. Am I wrong for thinking that?
No, I mean, I think the thing is, the analogy I've been using to describe MBS to a lot of folk is he's basically Vince McMahon. He has been in the background for as long as he has. Now, everybody wants to be a part of this. Everybody wants to strike while the iron is hot. And I think Formula One is probably reaching its apex in terms of a truly global phenomenon, unlike what it previously was, which was, and I'm being very cruel here in this sense, a niche sport for the hoi polloi of mostly a male.
That's a good point. I didn't really think of that. Vince McMahon is the perfect comparison, to be honest.
But like, he was never like the face. I don't know. We've had different FIA presidents that have been like a big deal in the sport and a big deal at large. We've had Jean Todt, and we've had oh god, who was the Braun team guy that was FIA president also? He worked for Ferrari. Why am I blanking on this?
The Italian gentleman?
No.
Jordan?
God, I can't believe I'm blanking on this.
Go for a Strollovich while Nick and I talk, and then come back to
like 2 a.m. I'm gonna get a message from Trevor on like making fun of me for forgetting this guy. Ross Brawn. Oh my god.
Ross Brawn. Yeah.
I even said his fucking name in the team title. Braun F1 GP. Anyway, we've had other big faces as FIA presidents prior to this, but it seems like the most successful ones have always been the kind of like, I'm here, but I'm not the face of anything. Like the drivers are the rock stars, the team principals are like the mouths of this. Like, I'm just here to like make sure it runs smoothly.
Yep.
Even the last guy, when F1 got bought by
Liberty Media.
There you go. Chase Carey, I think his name was. He was like some American businessman guy. He was the FIA president for a while after that, or the Formula One management president, I should say. Like, those types of guys have always worked better when there's a lot of talking heads in F1. So MBS, it just feels like he's almost like an Uncle Rico, if that makes sense. Like, he's still trying to grasp, because he was a racer on some level as well, but he's still trying to grasp onto that, kind of like a Max Verstappen. Like,
I mean, I think the other thing with MBS, and I hope this doesn't come across as xenophobic, because I think it will, there's always been this level of notoriety that comes with sports washing, especially from factors and parties in the Middle East. Like, they want everybody to know that, hey, this cool new innovation, so something like the Live Tour, or something like the investments that they've made to football clubs like Newcastle United and Manchester City and PSG have all been through the kindness of these estates in Middle East. And for me, with MBS kind of reigning to the forefront of Formula One, he's trying to show that even at its most popular, like, it's because I brought in all these new eyeballs. I did this, I did that. And I think for the first time in a long time, people are not necessarily gravitating towards that compliance that comes with dealing with these shadowy, mysterious Middle Eastern parties that bring you gobs and gobs of money, but sometimes they will ask you to just kind of keep things quiet as they move things in a slightly shady direction.
So that's a great point, because one of the things that was reported in the last few weeks was, and one of the reasons that I think maybe Kim Illman mentioned, but somebody mentioned about Richard Reed leaving the FIA, was that, it was the meeting.
We touched on this last episode, right? He was the one that tendered a letter of resignation saying, I kind of don't want to do this anymore because...
Yep. He resigned, but one of the reasons that he resigned was because he and I forget the other person from the Formula One side of things, like apparently one of the meetings about the future changes. MBS required everyone attending to sign an NDA, which, to your point about, maybe keeping things hush hush and moving things in the wrong direction. And I think that, the most of the grid has been vocal about things going in the wrong direction. Like, actually, George Russell I watched an interview with George Russell. I know, don't ask me why. I watched a George Russell interview, and he was actually talking about it, just like how the FIA, like, the drivers want to speak up, but they feel like they shouldn't, especially with all the cussing stuff, all the, kind of, not necessarily punishment, not official punishment, but kind of like punishment for cussing, which is exactly why, like, I think it was last weekend or maybe it was last race where Max basically just cut the interview short. And,
I'm not going to say any more because.
Yeah.
He's done that several times now. Like, he had the last time he got in trouble for the cursing or whatever it was, he refused to talk in the F1 press conference and then held his own press conference outside and said, like, I'll answer to anybody. But he can't cuss in, like, an official F1 broadcast, otherwise he gets fined. I think Sainz actually just got fined like $20,000 for cursing in something like that. But it's so ridiculous. Like, these guys are risking their lives at 200 miles an hour. Like, tensions are going to be high. If they drop an F-bomb, no one expects them to be angels. Look at any other sports league. When they do, like, mic'd up players in NHL or NFL or whatever, you hear all sorts of cursing from them, and they just bleep it out, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, like, they're like sports guys. It's a locker room environment, whatever. They're not going to be, prim and proper and say fiddlesticks like George Russell would. Like, he's focusing on the wrong things. So going back to your initial question, like, is he, like, short for his role or short for time on his role? I think so, especially with this big resignation. And I think, didn't you say maybe in our group chat or something that he's going to be running for FIA president? Or was that in the Discord?
Might have been in the Discord. Yeah. Because, I mean, he's I think this is why I think he's, like, I mean, almost, maybe a more polite version of Alex Albon right now, where he's, like, almost just making it obvious that he's around by being vocal about all this stuff, trying to make a bunch of changes, getting on Max right after the race. Like, all these things to me just seem like he knows that he needs to do something. I don't know if if these are the right things to get to be voted as president again, but it just seems odd that, you're gonna, I don't know. It just seems odd that it's almost like biting the hand that feeds you, in a sense, I
mean, to me, it almost seems like he is trying to distract us from the big thing, but we don't know what the big thing is. We don't have the hindsight. We don't have the full picture. But it seems like all these little nitpicky things that he is penalizing the drivers for, or engaging in this war of words, so to speak, with Max, is distracting us from something that we're just not seeing. So I think for me, like, he is let's just call him a slightly questionable figure, because we don't know who or what is listening to this podcast. And I value both as teammates, but more importantly, human beings. And I don't want to see either one of you in.
When you're talking about ending up on MBS's hit list, and the irony of you putting on chapstick right now is what I'm about to say is, like, I had the image of MBS doing, like, a full Wild Bill moment, or a Buffalo Bill, not Wild Bill, and him putting on lipstick and, like, writing our names on a list in lipstick.
that was, you're talking about also Steve Buscemi and Happy Gilmore, or sorry, Billy Madison.
Play on that. Yes. Yeah. Buffalo Bill, wild.
Hey, pretty lady.
All right, so I'm going to tee this up for you, Todd. We're gonna come back to some more MBS discussion in a sec, but do you want to put yourself on another man's hit list and talk about Lance Stroll's record-breaking achievement this last weekend?
just for the record, and by the record I mean shout out Iron Trev. I didn't put this on the agenda to talk about, so don't think that this was.
No, he did. He most certainly did.
I absolutely did not.
Don't listen to him, Trev.
You can yell at Ro and Nick for this one, but anyway, since it's on the docket, there was a stat posted recently after the last race that Lance Stroll is officially the record holder for the most Q1 exits of all time. Which I actually thought about it a little bit after the fact when I found that stat and posted it in the Discord.
Who did he usurp, first of all, for that record?
Kevin Magnussen, I think, is number 2.
Oh, really? Amazing.
I think so. But, like, one, he's like the ultimate Nepo baby in Formula One, and he's been in questionable teams pretty much the entire time he's been in Formula One. Or not questionable teams, like maybe underperforming cars, with the exception of like a little bit of Aston Martin podium-worthy car 2 years ago. But he's been around. This is what, 9th year in Formula One, 8th or 9th year, something like that. So of course, that's gonna automatically give him the title there, because he's been around a long time. He's been in questionable cars the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen. But like, also thinking back, the qualifying format that we have now started in what, 2006? Was it 6? That was somewhere around there. I thought it was 2008. But yeah, so we've had the knockout qualifying for not forever. I'm sure there's been worse drivers, and there has been worse drivers in Formula One.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I feel like this is a Lance Stroll apology hour.
No, it's a special kind of suck, because you are professional enough to have stayed in the grid by hook or by crook. Let's just leave it at that. But it does take a special kind of suck to always get out in Q1. But I also feel, and this is something you brought up in the beginning portions of this episode, Todd, was secretly he's been having a better year than Alonso.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, hot take for you guys, he's going to retire Fernando Alonso this year. You're welcome.
I mean, that's an interesting point. Like, how much longer does Fernando realistically have? Like, we just talked about this $300 million deal that may be on the table, trying to woo Max away from Red Bull. They're not going to replace Lance Stroll.
Okay.
Take him off the ledger sheet.
If you are going to replace Lance Stroll, if you are going to replace your son as a race car driver, the only way you can possibly get away with that is if it's Max Verstappen.
Replacing him with the prodigal son.
Right. And it's like that scene in Ted Lasso, you know, like when Jamie Tart basically can't get a job anymore. He gets cut from whichever club, and
Manchester City, and then he ends up on the reality show, and then he gets voted off the reality show. But go on.
Yeah, he gets voted off the reality show, and then he can't get back on Manchester City. So his manager or whatever is like, Jamie, you know, I'll always love you like a son, and now I'll love you like a dead son, which means more to me. So here's an interesting stat, though. Like, I was pulling this up. The Alonso, look, Alonso's not leaving Aston Martin, in my opinion.
Spotter rights.
Yeah, I think he has them. Since the start of 2023, Alonso has made it to Q3 36 times during that spell. Lance Stroll has gotten there on 16 occasions. Plus, obviously, Fernando Alonso has relationships with Honda, who's going to be the engine manufacturer in 2026 for Aston Martin. I just don't think they push Alonso out until I think Stroll goes first.
You think Stroll goes first?
Yep.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way. It's his dad. His dad owns the team. How many other people could he
let's go
been
through the
replaced
list.
with already? Like, so many good drivers.
Let me do this. This is my thing, okay?
Okay.
We'll just go through the grid. Is Lance Stroll replacing Any driver on Kick Sauber?
Both of them.
Oh, so you would take Stroll over Hulkenberg?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is he replacing anybody on Racing Bulls?
No.
One, I'd give him one of the seats. I don't know which one I would give him. Probably Liam Lawson's, ironically.
Yeah, probably Liam Lawson. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could go with either. They're just too fresh.
So let's just say this: he could get one of the 2 seats in Red Bull. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is his level.
Yeah.
Thank you, Racing Bulls. Can he replace? Better yet, let me phrase it this way: I'm assuming you guys would give him the second seat in Alpine. Would you give him Pierre Gasly's seat in Alpine?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, probably not.
Sure.
Okay, in Haas.
I don't think I'd give him Ollie Behrman's seat.
Well, I don't expect him to give Ollie Berman. Would you give him Ocon's seat?
Ratatouille?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's actually
maybe.
That's a right there 1A 1B situation.
Listener, I'm just gonna once again say the gentleman that's in question of losing his seat has actually won a race, and he's done it with the Bizarro daddy. So
and why did he win that race? How did Ocon win that race?
A win's
Alonso,
a win.
But how come Stroll hasn't done the same thing with Alonso as a teammate?
They haven't had the car.
That's not my problem.
They kind of had the car. For
they did have
Alonso
a car.
Can walk on water and turn water into wine at the same
races
time.
of that year. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's what I thought. Is he replacing either guy on Williams?
No.
Is he replacing anybody in the top 8 in terms of the top 4 teams?
4. No.
So at best, you are saying he is Esteban Ocon in terms of the lead driver in the 5th team on the grid as we are recording this episode today.
We'll see. And the flip of that is I 100% would take Alonso over more people on the grid, even at his age.
Yeah, no, that's a given. He's won 2 titles, not races, titles.
Right. But we have this one giant thing.
How dare you refer to Ratatouille?
Giant thing in the background of Lawrence Strollovich. There's just no way he gets rid of, unless it's Max. And again, I just don't see it happening.
And I think that would be even more ruthless because you're saying, you know what, the love of a father is truly one of those most beautiful bonds a son can have, unless a generational driver comes in between them.
They've already got a generational driver. Alonso was that. I think if they have, let's just theoretically say that the Max signing is happening, I would bet probably a lot of money that Alonso goes before Stroll.
Yeah, probably, but I would also like to think that I always root for chaos, especially when I have no dog in the fight. I could see Max joining Aston Martin. I could see them retaining Fernando Alonso. And there's only one man that can be the lion tamer of the chaos that would ensue, and that's already a driver on the grid who now holds the record for the most Q1 exits. As your new team principal, I present to you Lance Stroll.
Maybe somebody in the.
I'm so upset with both of you saying you would take him over Ocon.
And then
both of you are ridiculous.
In a Ratatouille sort of moment, we have Esteban Ocon. Or we have Lance Stroll in a chef's hat. We have a mini Esteban Ocon in his hat telling him what to do, how to be a team principal.
Ocon's going to be a top 10 driver by the end of this year, so I will be having the last lap.
And speaking of the end of this year, Lance Stroll will still have this record even if he finishes in first for the rest of this year because the only drivers that are even...
No, it's a special kind of suck.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So somebody needs to just send this story or these facts to Daddy Stroll and say, $300 million for Max is looking really nice right now.
I think this just ups the price to $500 million because who are we to stand in the way of greatness?
$500 million for Max, and you tell my son he can't race anymore.
So who's more
Final
dominant?
Offer.
No. Who's more dominant in their chosen race format? Lance Stroll in Q1 exits or Max Verstappen in race wins? I'll let you decide, Lawrence.
I still think Alonso goes before Stroll.
No, you're Todd. Everybody knows that's going to happen, but we don't like to deal in normalcy. We like to deal in idiocracy here.
I want the chaos as well, but I just can't even fathom that.
Then you don't want the chaos. That's all I can say to you. You don't want the chaos then.
Oh, we lost an earbud.
We did.
It's getting real. Did we have any other things for the?
Oh, we have to answer Nick's question.
Yeah, we just got the big question. Who's going to push Max Verstappen out of Formula One racing, I should say. Is he still? I feel like Max is gonna like basically like just he'll be like 90 still destroying people on like
iRacing.
iRacing, yeah.
You guys go first. I've already thought of my answer.
Oh my god! You know what's going to happen before you answer? You know what's going to happen? They're gonna. What's the app where you can have a celebrity do a cameo?
Cameo.
The cameo for Max is that he will whoop your ass in iRacing, and you pay him money. That will be the end of his career in like 50, 60 years.
I will tell you who is going to retire Max Verstappen, and it's something that's not been mentioned at all on this pod. It is going to be his unborn seed.
Son of a bitch! That was what I was going to say. I was like, mic drop, that's who's going to push him out of Formula One. He's going to get bored with Formula One. And
he's going to be the one thing he never had in his life, which is being a good dad to little Damien or Damiana, because that is going to be the omen.
The Hellspawn.
Yeah, the Hellspawn. And unless he does a great job as a father, he's only going to continue the cycle. And if there's one thing Max Verstappen loves to do, it's break the cycle. And it's break the standards and norms of looking what a good race car driver looks like and now what a good dad looks like. Because I think he's going to kill it as a dad. And by it, I mean not his child due to negligence and
He's not going to leave his newborn child at a gas station?
Yep.
Got to toughen up, kid.
I mean, that's too good of an answer. I feel like we should just drop the mic on that and ask everybody what their opinion is. Because I was going to say MBS, and we've already bashed on him enough to where I know I'm on the hit list. So let's.
I'm sorry for taking your answer, Todd, but I also need to find my AirPod because now this is bugging me.
An animated episode.
That was the perfect answer. I was so excited to say that. And son of a bitch. That was good. That was the perfect way to end it.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for listening. Make sure that you give us a review. We're trying to get that number up a little bit, but we appreciate y'all, and we'll catch you sometime probably before the next race.
Follow me on OnlyFans at Max Mommy and Me.